Hello everyone! Thanks for tuning in today to hear what else I saw in September that I didn't already tell you about. A varied list again, but not so many movies. Certainly not as many as I had planned to watch, but that's okay. There's always next month. Movie number 1 is 1953's Tokyo Story, directed by Yasuhiro Ozu. This is the third Ozu film I've watched this year, and it stars Chishu Ryu and Chieko Higashiyama as an aging couple who make the long train journey into Tokyo for a lengthy visit with their adult children. But they find the younger generation is so busy with their own affairs that they don't have time for them, and though no one ever says it, the parents can tell that their presence is an inconvenience. Earlier this year, when I decided, unofficially, to check out some Ozu films, this was at the top of the list. But while I wanted to see it, I also dreaded it. I had that feeling about another film on this list. This is a narrative that just breaks my heart. The story is fictional, but the domestic tragedies are as relevant today as they were in Ozu's transitional post-war Japan. The elderly being shut out of a society that's moving on without them, grown-up children not making it a priority to spend valuable time with their parents once they have a home of their own, the awkwardness of long-distance grandparents trying to connect with their grandchildren who view them as little more than strangers, the plight of the helpless and lonely in the vulnerable twilight of their lives, the acknowledgement that age, and all the struggle that comes with it, is inevitable, the lack of compassion for older people from impatient younger people who can't or won't relate to their difficulties. These are unfortunately timeless themes, and ones I feel very deeply about. So this was tough to watch at times. I recognized many cast members from previous Ozu films I watched, Late Spring and Good Morning. There were also conflicts, relationships, and sentiments that resurfaced. Not only are the themes timeless, I was also amused to observe little behaviors that I've seen in my own family and other families over here in the present day. As different as we are in time, country, and culture, there's that commonality of human nature, experience, and instinct. I didn't have quite the same experience with this as I did with Late Spring, which also stars Chishu Ryu and Setsuko Hara. Late Spring closes with a scene that, just destroys you with the subtlest action. There wasn't an equivalent gut punch for me here. Rather, I felt emotionally on edge the whole way through. My sympathy for this older couple was heightened almost from the start. Their adult kids and their children drove me kind of crazy, especially their daughter, played by Haruko Sugimura, another Ozu regular. She was absolutely the worst in this, and her character was pretty dreadful in Good Morning, too. It figures that the one who treats them with the most generosity and kindness is the one who's not even a blood relative, Setsuko Hara's sweet-tempered daughter-in-law. She was a beloved actress in Japan, and I can totally understand why, based on her performance here and in Late Spring. Tokyo Story is a great film, but depending on how you feel about these topics, I would say that you may find it a distressing experience. Movie number 2 is 1971's von Richthofen and Brown, a World War I film directed by Roger Corman about the aerial battles between the Germans and the Allies, specifically the short but brilliant career of ace pilot Baron Manfred von Richthofen, better known as the Red Baron, here played by John Philip Law. I'm much keener on World War II films, as I'm sure you know, and I find films about aviation combat require a little extra patience, but this wasn't a bad film. John Philip Law is a good-looking guy, there's no denying that, but there is a stiffness about either his performance or the script which keeps him from warming up too much. Even so, I found Richthofen more appealing than the Canadian Brown who sets about bringing him down. Brown is played by Don Stroud, who seemed to me like he was doing an imitation of someone. I never did put my finger on what his performance or who his performance reminded me of. I'm not sure how many of the depicted events are true. I didn't know Hermann Göring, future air marshal under Hitler, was in the same squadron as the Red Baron, butting heads with him and jealous of his position. That's how the movie presents it, at least. Based on Richthofen's Wikipedia page, the film does take liberties to make things more exciting. The dramatization of how the flying circus came into existence may not be accurate, and the role of Brown may be inflated. Who shot the fatal bullet has actually been a subject of much debate over the last century, and is unresolved to this day. I also think references to the next war and the Jews may have been shooed in for the knowing contemporary audience. Still, while there are some things, technical and artistic, about the film that are kind of rusty, it was an entertaining depiction of a period and event I didn't have much knowledge of. The action scenes are decent, and it's neat to see the older style planes and the then new Fokkers, which I recognize from a Red Baron computer game I used to play on our old Windows 95. Movie number 3 is 1947's Out of the Blue, a comedy about the goings-on in an apartment building where George Brent, already embroiled in a dispute with his Playboy artist neighbor, Turhan Bey, meets up with a troublesome drunk, Anne Vorschak, while his wife, Carol Landis, is away on a trip. When Vorschak passes out in his apartment, Brent thinks she's dead and panics, leaving her body on Turhan Bey's terrace, where it's spotted by two nosy old ladies across the way. Things only get more complicated from there, and co-starring as Bey's love interest is Virginia Mayo, who also plays a major role here, but I just couldn't figure out a way to squeeze her into that summary. I heard of this movie not too long ago and was interested in seeing it, mainly for its cast, so I was pleased when it showed up on Turner Classic Movies. It didn't quite meet my expectations, though. It has some funny lines, and there are certainly wild shenanigans. I don't see much of Turhan Bey, but I find him appealing, so it was nice to see a movie with him in it, and one where his is a charming character and not a bad guy. And I especially enjoyed a sequence where he and Virginia Mayo pretend to be partners in crime, Mayo getting into the act with relish. But the plot was largely an irritating one, with a peculiarly giggly performance from Brent and an annoying turn from Anne Vorschak, though hers is a remarkably different performance. I knew it was going to be a silly movie, but what I was expecting was a black comedy, and it just wasn't as dark as I'd been hoping for. Movie number 4 is 1966's The Frozen Dead, a film about a plot involving cryogenically frozen Nazis. Now that's more like it. Dana Andrews stars as a German doctor who specializes in the freezing and thawing of living organisms. 20 years after the war, the remnants of Hitler's followers are eager to get back to work and hound Andrews for results, unaware that his attempts to bring people back have only resulted in the resurrection of men with mental deficiencies. Add in the unexpected arrival of his niece, who knows nothing of his work, and her friend from school, plus an overeager assistant trying to get back into the party's good graces, and you have the makings of a horror film. I went into this with low expectations and found it quite enjoyable, and my mom really liked it. It's got good atmosphere and creepy visuals and disturbing stuff, but, it never goes too far. It's Frankenstein plus Nazis meets The Brain That Wouldn't Die with Hammer horror-esque style, complete with the image of a girl wandering around the big creepy house in her floofy nightgown, going down stone steps to the forbidden dungeon laboratory with candle held aloft. Snarky film critics might glance at this movie and say, wow, what a step down for Dana Andrews. Guess his career was in the tank. And certainly this was not a high-quality film like some of his earlier work. But he gives a very good, consistent performance, complete with a convincing German accent. Moreover, I give him credit for making the effort and thereby helping raise the caliber of the film, which could have been really bad otherwise. When an actor gets to a point in his career when he's faced with a part in a movie like this, he has a choice. He can wallow in self-pity over the downward spiral of his career and phone in his performance, or he can accept that this is the way things are right now and make the most of it, giving the best performance he can because he's an actor and that's his job, and because he has respect for his fellow actors and the crew members who are all trying to make a living. I have much more respect for an actor who chooses that second option. Also, there is a delightful goof near the end of the film where you can see a man, probably supervising the arm actors on the other side of that wall, just standing there watching the action. I can't believe I noticed this, and I was like, what was that? Go back! And I rewound it and paused it and pointed it out to my mom, and we had a good laugh, and it made the movie even better. Movie number 5 is 1948's Behind Locked Doors, in which Richard Carlson stars as a private detective just starting out who agrees to help Lucille Bremer's lady journalist find an ex-judge who's gone missing. She believes the judge is hiding out in a sanitarium, so they cook up a scheme to get Carlson admitted as a patient. Carlson's just supposed to look for the judge, but once he's in, what he uncovers is a nightmarish truth about the sanitarium itself. Directed by Bud Bedecker, who's known more for making low-budget westerns, it's a relatively short film, nothing fancy, but it's got some very nice photography and atmosphere, a tidy story, and compelling support from some lesser-known actors. For fans of science fiction, you've got Richard Carlson, and also Tor Johnson, who you'll recognize if you're familiar with Plan 9 from Outer Space. Johnson plays an abused mental patient in the locked ward, goaded into acts of violence by Douglas Fowley's sadistic orderly. Within the realm of old films set in a psychiatric hospital, it's not as good as the 1948 Olivia de Havilland drama The Snake Pit, which thankfully has no snakes in it, and due to its poverty row status, it couldn't explore its subject matter too deeply, but I think it handles it well enough. Movie number 6 is 2020's The Father. Anthony Hopkins stars as a man struggling with the reality that he has dementia. On one hand, it explores his troubled relationship with his daughter, Olivia Colman, who's trying her best to take care of him. On the other hand, it explores the confusion and loss of cognitive function that he's experiencing, craftily putting the viewer in his shoes. Like Tokyo Story, this is a film that I wanted to see as soon as I heard about it, but I also dreaded what I assumed would be a sad experience. On film, as it is in real life, it is a terrible thing to watch someone's identity and ability to function slip away like this. A few years ago, I did a combined book and film review of Still Alice, which is about a linguistics professor who develops early onset Alzheimer's. And it's rough. That story starts near the beginning and follows the progress of the disease as Alice's condition deteriorates. The father begins somewhere in the middle, and we don't know how bad his condition is until things start to happen that don't make sense, and then it clicks. French writer Florian Zeller directed this adaptation, his first film, based on his own play, and everything about it, the visuals, the dialogue, the settings, the editing, is designed to give the viewer a sense of what the father himself is going through. The film is disorienting. The passage of time is vague. Conversations seem to repeat or mirror each other. Events seem to be jumbled out of sequence. A character appears played by one actor and then comes back later played by someone else, and we don't know what's real and what isn't. It's like a psychological thriller, the way it leads you to mistrust everything you see and hear, as the father does. Anthony Hopkins seems like he was born to play this role, with all its emotional contrasts, the vulnerability, the unexpected buoyancy, the sharp wit and cutting sarcasm, the whole package. He nails it. All of the performers, Coleman plus Olivia Williams, Imogen Poots, Mark Gatiss, and Rufus Sewell, are good in their roles. While it is an astonishing and complex portrayal of a dementia patient's mind, it is also a family drama. You feel equally horrible for his daughter, watching her father decline, wanting to do the right thing for him, but also having her own life to live, and struggling not to break down when he says some incredibly hurtful things to her and about her. It is a complicated film, and it's possibly not for everyone, but it's very well made, and I really liked it. And movie number 7 is 2008's Quarantine, in which a journalist and her cameraman shadowing a team of firefighters find themselves locked in an apartment building with a virus that turns its victims into vicious monsters. I've had this one on the watch list for a few years. It's a found footage film, shot entirely from the videographer's POV. It's one solid time-tested concept on top of another on top of another, and the execution is fairly good, in that once we got past the inanity of the first 15 minutes of setup, I was very tense. It's not perfect. There's a lot of shaky cam and flashing lights, which goes with the found footage territory. Some portions of dialogue are nearly impossible to understand over the sound of a helicopter overhead, and people do some stupid things. It has some elements and twists that we've seen before, and the lead character, played by Jennifer Carpenter, has a tendency to state the obvious and repeat herself when she isn't screaming in terror, which makes her a less than inspiring heroine. But I was stressed out and grossed out right through to the end, so as far as I'm concerned, the movie accomplished what it set out to do. Afterward, I noticed in the credits that the cast also featured Joey King, who's very popular now, and creepy creature specialist Doug Jones. Quarantine is a remake of the 2007 Spanish film Rec, which has a much higher IMDb score, so maybe I should have seen that one instead, but I don't know, this one did the trick for me. And those are the movies I saw in September. Not a huge number, but an interesting mix, as usual. It might have been more, but my parents and I spent our Friday nights in September watching episodes of Colditz, the 1972 British TV show about Allied POWs in World War II living in and trying to escape from Colditz Castle. It's a 2-season show, 15 episodes each. You can find most of the episodes on YouTube, which is how we're watching it. We're almost done with season 1, and I'm very impressed. It's got a solid ensemble cast, great featured performances, and compelling stories. I'm really enjoying it, so I wanted to mention that as well. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have seen any of these films, please feel free to let me know what you thought of them in the comments below, and I'll be back with another review soon. I have a lot planned for October. I probably won't get to everything that I have in mind, but I'm gonna do the best that I can. Thanks for watching.